briefing. He was like, have you seen this? And I said, no, I haven't. So
I will be brief in the introduction because we have more or less an hour to talk with Adrien Brody about his great career. I think you all know his great body of work, and it's very hard to summarize an artist's career, and it is even harder with someone like Adrien Brody, who played a great diversity of roles. He's been a soldier in World War II, he's been a screenwriter sent to Skull Island, he's been a photographer, like his mother is, a French count, high school teacher, kind of tribute to his father, a fighter for social equality, Salvador Dali, a matador. But what strikes me is that no matter if he's working with a celebrated masters or less known director, he always plays best. So I'd like to start with one of his characters. It seems really far away from the rest of the roles he has played. And at the same time, it deals with the city he grew up in, New York. So I'd like to start with Richie, the character of Son of Sam. Can you tell us how Spike Lee presented the role to you?
well, Son of Sam. It was a pretty fantastic experience. It was still relatively early in my career, and the role, you know, I to be honest, I look at all of the roles as very different from me and from each other, and I strive for that. I strive to find characters that allow me to understand something new about other people and other people's lives, but also myself. I've gained certain interests through an education that was formed from immersing myself in another character. And how many people have seen Summer of Sam? Anybody? A few people? Okay, the rest of you should see the movie. It's pretty good. So I'll brief you about what it is so you understand what he's referencing. Summer of Sam is a Spike Lee movie that takes place during the summer of 1977, which was the hottest summer to date in New York City. So kind of like today in Locarno, a little hotter. And in that summer as well was a serial killer named the Son of Sam, who was murdering girls, young women who were had a specific look, and there was a lot of panic in the city. And I played a punk rocker. It's the '70s movement, and played a young Italian kid from the Bronx who really wants to escape that reality and become a rock star, a punk rocker. And because of my difference, because of my physical difference to the rest of the normal people in the neighborhood, they see my character as fitting the description of what this serial killer must have been, and they persecute me. There are other great storylines with John Leguizamo and Mira Sorvino, but we'll talk about my storyline. I think it answers several questions of what motivates me to do a role, and partially I was drawn to that. I was drawn to the judgment that people make on perceptions that they form that are not based on truths, but are based on very superficial things, and it is something that obviously we're very aware of that exists all around us. You know, the stranger must be a threat. You know, but it's often not the strange-looking person. It's the normal-looking person, or the people that seem the most normal. So But it wasn't so different. The punk rock culture, I grew up loving hip hop music and not punk music, but I really got a chance to dive into that scene. And there was a great old nightclub called CBGB's. Who's heard of CBGB's? Remember that place? Well, I got to perform in CBGB's. We did a show in the film. And CBGB's is no longer there, but it was like an iconic old place where all the great punk bands, Debbie Harry and all the guys played. And we had all these real street kids. At that time in New York, there was the 70s, and then where we were shooting in the 90s, there was a lot of punk kids in the East Village, and they got all these real kids to come, and I did a show there. And I remember these two girls came over after the show that we filmed, and they were like, "Where can we get your music?" And I thought I would change professions because I really enjoyed that feeling of being on stage and these that crazy life. So it was a lot of fun. It was a great experience.
Maybe we can go back to another role you had previously, King of the Hill. The role of your character is called Lester, and it's a film by Steven Soderbergh. And did you consider this role as the beginning of your career? Because you were 19, at the same time you play a character more or less of your age, but the film is set back in the past, in the Depression era.
This character. Yeah. It was a big break for me. Put it that way. It's funny. I was going to mention something last night, which is kind of related to that about first roles. But I started acting when I was 12 professionally, and the first film I'd gotten was a television film about orphans in New York that were being sent off to adoption into the Midwest, to families that own farms, and many of them were put to work, but some of them were given a good home and religion and guidance and a life. And that was that was a lead role in the film, and my father took me to that audition when I was very young, and he gave me the best advice ever, which was, he said, go in there. When you go in there like you already have the role. You're just going to show them. And I remember that it was the best direction you could get, because it gave me ownership of the character. It wasn't me borrowing the material and giving an interpretation of that. It was a discovery that I have to make the character me and my own. And that was the foundation for me to start working. So I had I learned a lot of discipline on that at a very young age. That was over 30 years ago. And King of the Hill was several years later, but was the real break that people within my industry started to be aware of me. I'd go on auditions. For many years I was going on auditions. I was completely anonymous. And then casting directors would start to know my work before I stepped in the room, and that was so. I remember that's the first moment of recognition for something, which was so wonderful. And then it started becoming, it helped a great deal.
We're gonna show the film this afternoon, but I want to ask you something about Władysław Spielman. The pianist. It was a great character to act, but also I know it was quite of a challenge. Both physically and also learning to play the piano and Chopin. So can you tell us a little bit about the process you have to undergo in order to be or somebody who's a great man?
Well, the pianist is a unique opportunity in one's lifetime. It was probably the greatest responsibility that I've had to take on as an actor. I normally do feel a great sense of responsibility, just in a sense of professionalism, of what I am responsible to do and for the film, and when there's a fictional character, to create something that is unique and accessible and complex. But in this case, I am to hold up the memory of someone that not only survived the atrocities of World War II and the Holocaust, but managed to create a beautiful memoir to share, and then also Roman Polanski's direct suffering from that time, and the two kind of merged. And Roman was able to turn his tragic personal experiences into something artistic and generously and unsentimentally give a window into the horror of that time. And I was also 27 when I made this film, young and had not fully grasped perspective that I have as a result of making that movie, and I'm very grateful for that. And I gained a lot of that perspective, a lot of the understanding of the potential for suffering and the need for us to acknowledge our blessings that we all take for granted from time to time. And really, it was a series of responsibilities that were compounded. There was a physical shift, because you cannot act starvation. You can understand hunger. You can do some work for hunger to have a memory of that, or not eat on the days that you're to experience that. But the rapid weight loss can only come from a starvation diet, which really gave me a much greater insight into hunger and the shift in your own, how you view yourself, how you view the world around you, and the desperation that comes from that, even though I could have broken down and eaten stuff beyond what I had regimented myself to. But you know, if you consider that there's so much hunger in the world, and then you expand upon that, and the helplessness and homelessness and refugee crisis and ethnic cleansing and whatever that still exists, it was really harrowing to absorb that, and the magnitude of what took place at that time in a civilized part of the world. People who were well ingrained in society, and it's just something very difficult to comprehend as a privileged young man growing up in New York City, very far from this. And so that changed everything. And the connection with music was another very interesting facet of this, because Roman wanted to shoot several sequences where he had to rely upon me actually playing portions of the Ballade and the Nocturne, Chopin's work. And these are beautiful works, and they're very complex works, and I don't read music, and I had to learn to play these portions so that we could achieve that. And of course that was very strenuous, but it helped me a lot, because the hunger and the isolation that I was working towards, and the emptiness of that, of the deprivation that one feels when they're hungry and lonely and isolated. Music soothes. And the focus and the need to focus on the music and the appending what I had learned one day to the next and practicing constantly. I basically lived in a hotel room with a piano and couldn't really socialize as much, couldn't go out to eat with anyone because that was terrible, and I just stayed home and I stopped listening to my hip-hop music and modern stuff and just, you know, immersed myself in that. But the connection to the music, which ultimately gave me a sense of truth and a connection to the character and an understanding of not only how we are transported from music, but in the ways that I played it and when I played it well, and the subtle nuances in interpreting the composition each time, each performance. It's phenomenal, and I'm grateful for all of that.
We got some questions for the question. What was the hardest part doing the character?
Well, I kind of just answered that, but
it was more the starvation.
no, I mean, look, at the end of the day, physical discomfort passes. I think it's something that is, it's there to teach us a lesson, but most physically painful things, if you break an arm, if you injure yourself, they're excruciating. But the memory of that pain goes away. The memory of certain things goes away. It's the emotional and the psychological aspects of that and the burdens of things that really affect us deeply, I feel. And you know, this was, you know, most movies today, and this is a bigger conversation, but most movies today, if you're doing independent film, there are less and less resources for that. Most of the resources for movie making and studio side go to these epic studio films and superhero movies, and they have plenty of resources and time to find it. When you do a small independently financed film, you are squeezing in as much as you can in a very short period of time, and there's never enough time. There's never enough time to do it as well as you would like, and so there's enormous pressure on everyone involved. And the pianist had time. We had a lot of pressure. We shot 6-day weeks, 12 to 16 hours a day. Roman didn't like to use a stand-in, so I was on set morning to night so that we could collaborate the entire time. And, you know, it was 6 months. And, you know, I make movies sometimes in 6 weeks, in 5 weeks. And the responsibility of having to be there 6 days a week and carry the weight of that time period and the pressure of that was the challenge. And it was such a marathon. The beauty of it is it's put everything into perspective. And no job has been that difficult after that. And so it's given me strength, because I always can look back at just the understanding of the discomfort that I felt is minuscule compared to the real suffering that exists. And it's a constant reminder that there's not much to worry about, even when we have lots to worry about.
That's very true, yeah. Maybe to move to something more light, I would like to talk with you about another great, to me at least, universe, the universe of Wes Anderson. Sometimes, more than others, making a film is being part of the family. I think this expression is very much appropriate for the Wes Anderson. So, did you consider, you did 2 films plus a short film, I consider a short film.
Mm-hmm.
Did you consider yourself as a member of the Anderson family, or have you?
And I did a voice for Fantastic Mr. Fox. So
right.
yeah, I love Wes. Wes is, I'm sure many of you. Who's seen Grand Budapest Hotel? Okay, good, good. Who's seen the Darjeeling Limited? Hey, good. Nice. Wes is, you know, such a genius, unique storyteller. If you look at any of his images, you say, oh, that's a Wes Anderson film. And it's such a privilege to have been welcomed into his fold. And you know, a friendship has ensued. I care greatly about him. He's just a lovely, great friend and confidant. And you know, I really thank Wes. Ultimately, he's one of the earliest directors to have allowed me to be funny. I think there's such an association, and really, part of the dilemma is that my main introduction to the world, you know, I'd been acting for 17 years before The Pianist had come out. And some people had seen my work, but when they got to see me, and the interviews and the conversations, just as we are having today, where we discuss that experience, and the gravity of that experience requires a certain tone and a certain thought. And so I was perceived as this very serious dramatic actor, which I gravitate towards. But it blocked a bit of the perception that there's room for humor and there's room for comedic timing and a broader yearning for self-expression, which is the beauty and purpose of being an actor, to be as much of a chameleon as possible. And so what ensued was a lot of offers to play great tragic characters and you know, more discussion upon you know, this experience and Wes gave me this chance to play something that was both very subtle and grounded in reality, yet heightened and full of comedic timing, and interact with great comedic actors like Jason and Owen Wilson, Jason Schwartzman. And it was such a privilege. I have to tell you, it was so liberating because it's within me. And you know, I crack myself up all the time, whether I'm doing something stupid or I say something ridiculous or I have a thought, and to be able to harness that and share that and bring laughter and lightness is also part of the beauty and something that I've always yearned to do with my work. And so Wes has given me that. And even playing a villain in his film, there's plenty of room for humor and absurdity. So it's been a
How much
been a
did you
blast.
enjoy to play Dimitri?
You know, it's really good when the beauty of making movies is that the repercussions are very slim usually, and you can go pretty far and be really sinister and you know, it's a lot of fun.
Another very peculiar film, a film that I like a lot, The Village. Because again, I think it allows me to ask you something about a different character, Noah. The character you are playing is a young man with some mental problems, so I think it's also another kind of challenge. Played a man that has to express himself without word, but in a different way from the pianist. And
Yes. Well, yeah.
maybe The Village is a trailer by Night Shyamalan. Maybe you have seen it.
Yeah, Night Shyamalan's film, yes. The character that I portray in that film was named Noah Percy. As it was written, he was mentally handicapped. I'll begin a little early, which was that Night had approached me with the material. This was my first film that I accepted after The Pianist. That was not the lead role. it was a character that was very complex and very challenging to do well and not be too broad, to portray someone with that type of handicap, and it was essential in storytelling. And more difficultly, Knight made me promise not to share the script with anyone, including my representatives, who often weigh in on the decision, which I honored. And so I had read a screenplay that I responded to, and Knight was a filmmaker who I had great admiration for. Sixth Sense was an amazing film, and Unbreakable, and he had done Unbreakable, and I said, oh, this is an interesting opportunity. Joaquin Phoenix was set in the other role, and I wanted to work with Joaquin, and I accepted it, and I took that responsibility on it. Partially it was because it was so different and so risky and so rooted in the path that I had taken thus far, which my concern was now when more overtly commercial or heroic characters would be presented after becoming commercially viable, I would perhaps lose track of what drew me to acting and what motivated me as an actor. And so I took on that challenge, and I spent time with mentally handicapped children, and I worked with some organizations in Los Angeles, and what I discovered was they're the purest-hearted people you can imagine. There, of course, is a limit to their learning capacity. With that, they maintain a youthfulness and a childlike perspective. And young boys can be bad and do things that are very bad and mischievous, and I tried to capture that. But there was another layer within the story, and I discussed it with Knight, but I had to incorporate a disorder. And so then I had to begin delving into mental disorders, and but the beauty of that was, you know, I wanted to create a character that was childlike and endearing, yet capable of grave mistakes, and and I had to do it pretty much on my own, you know, I think that set a tone of what I wanted to pursue in the coming years.
We have another question. Is there another form of art that you would like to explore in the next years? Because as you might know, Adrien Brody, of course, is a great actor, but also painter. He started recently doing exhibition with his paintings. But the question is also about other form of art.
Well, painting is a real blessing. Painting, I painted and drew when I was young and through many years, and I actually didn't get accepted into art school. I got accepted for drama, fortunately, and I pursued acting with everything that I could give. And the beauty of painting is there is a sense of creative autonomy that is not afforded to an actor. There is a new language, a newer language for me to uncover and to convey my own perceptions of the world around me. My first series was referencing how violence in America is as commonplace as fast food, and I did a series called Hot Dogs, Hamburgers, and Handguns. And there's a degree of humor within that, and a degree of tragedy. But the reality in which that I grew up, and many of us have grown up, exposed to tremendous violence, including fast food. I mean, I let it on myself, even though I love a cheeseburger. It's just, we have to be mindful of what is best for us and how we raise our children and what we are exposed to. And it's a complex dilemma, and it's something that I was able to explore in my work. And I've done other works, and but it's very rewarding and gives me the creative fulfillment that I crave and time to be selective with the film work that I choose. And on that note, you know, my mother is a brilliant photographer. She's here. She's probably photographing me. Yeah, she's there with that amazing camera that captures 180 degrees, and she's been a big guiding light to me, and in more ways than I can share. But visually, I grew up around amazing imagery. If you Google Sylvia Plahi's images, you will see what I'm talking about. They are magnificent. And so before I even had the opportunity to work with all these fantastic filmmakers with a great cinematic vision and composition, I witnessed my entire life such filmmaking, such pure artistic filmmaking on film, distilled image by image. And she develops her own work. They would be on record racks, drying, there'd be negatives hanging in the shower, there was images everywhere. So my love for filmmaking, my understanding, my master class with Polanski 6 days a week for 6 months on set, while every shot was formed with a viewfinder and him giving me a viewfinder and all of that. It's inevitable that I have to take on the challenge and responsibility of directing one day. And you know, the dilemma is that I have to find something that I want to live with and a story to tell that is meaningful and is accessible, and I think also I'd like to guide actors because I understand the process so intimately, and so I have a skill set that I think would be very useful for helping them reach their full potential. So, you know, that's on my mind a great deal, and there's a lot to do. There's a lot to do between all of that. So,
The aspect of cinema, we played in a so-called blockbuster, more than one, but I would like to deal with King Kong by Peter Jackson. If I'm correct, you have to work, of course, because of the big Kong with the green screen. How it is to work with a green screen, and how different it is working with a natural setting or a set.
well, green screen and I mean, technology has advanced so much even beyond then. I mean, to put it into perspective, we shot that film. That was a 9-month movie, and when we had a 3-month or so hiatus in which I went and shot Hollywoodland in the middle. So I worked that entire year, very vastly different character, and came back, finished Kong for several months. But within that year of filming, the technology had already changed. So we did scans, we did full scan, and so they can create certain moments, and they were able to redo this 3-dimensional scanning process, and now it is light years beyond that. You know, especially in a certain type of filmmaking, which is remarkable. This technology affords the filmmaker endless ways of telling a story. There really is nothing. You have the imagination and the resources and the people with the technical ability to help support your vision. There's really nothing you cannot do, which is something pretty hard to grasp. You look at films like Christopher Nolan's work, and they incorporate great dramatic work, and yet expand beyond what's achievable because of technology. And that's a perfect balance of the two. And even King Kong, I mean, there was a lot that was rooted on, you know, emotional storytelling, and yet you have this creature that does not exist there, that is so nuanced. And it's not just a feat of technology. It was Andy Serkis who's made a career of playing primates, and has been fortunate to reapply his dedication in studying primates for King Kong into being the lead of Planet of the Apes, and you know, really bringing truths to that, dramatic truths that an actor connects to. And then
Was he more with the capture?
he was Kong. Andy Serkis was Kong. Andy Serkis was also Gollum. But I love as an actor to see that he has managed to play a different character, but as a primate. So he has the foundation that he's learned to understand ape behavior, which is fascinating, and then apply it in several characters in several films, which is wonderful. But the challenge is you do not have always something real in front of you to interact with, and the more something feels real, the easier it is to connect to that, and the more that you have someone to interact with that you can actually listen to and be alone with and block out the rest of the noise, the easier it is to capture that intimacy on film, which is the goal, really. And you're in these vast green sterile rooms in giant warehouse buildings, and you know, I mean, there are moments where you're swimming on a rope in a green room, being suspended, and you're not underwater, and there are 30 people watching you, and you've never swam in the air on a rope before, and it's challenging, especially if you know you're used to a certain type of storytelling. And I remember it being much harder than I thought. It was so hard. It's so hard to be great because you have all these other responsibilities going on that all have to work, and they have to work in order for your business to work. And so you are much more, even though it is an essential element of the film, you are much more a cog in a much bigger wheel. And it was fascinating. And you know, there's a whole sequence in that film, if you ever watch it, that we are kind of ensconced upon by insects, crickets and crabs and giant roach-like creatures that devour us. And that's based on the 1930s original King Kong, and which was the impetus to make Peter Jackson want to become a filmmaker. And it's this amazing scene, and part of it was actually cut out from the original because it was too crazy for that time for audiences. And we made the scene. There's not one thing on us. We're interacting and shooting and seeing and peeling off of us. Nothing. And when you watch it, it's amazing. It's amazing to see that. And there's something really beautiful about that, because you're transported to a time, even if the process is challenging. You look back, and I was there with dinosaurs. I was there communing with things that I could not. And I always look at that movie like that's the one I want my grandchildren to. There are several, obviously, but that one, I think, for a young grandchild which is looking way far in advance. But to see how cool Grandpa was hanging out with, probably the technology is going to look like a black and white film though. There's a problem. They're going to be like, oh, play with the stick figure, dinosaur. But still, even that film, even the 30s Kong with stop motion, is so exciting. Exciting for me to watch and the interaction. So I feel really fortunate that Peter selected me to be a part of that film.
So did you watch the first movie as preparing the role, or Peter Jackson asked you to do that?
No, I'd seen that film many times, and actually what was wonderful, what I love about Peter and Fran and Philippa, Fran Welsh is his wife, and Philip Boyens is their writing partner, and you know, they wrote Kong, and they wrote, you know, collaborated together all on Lord of the Rings, and they're very creative. What I thought was so amazing to do, and this was, at the time, it was Universal's biggest film. It was their most expensive film. So this was prior to all these massive Marvel films. And it was several $100 million movie, which is an amazing thing. And they created a leading man character that had an intellect and sensitivity, was a writer, and was a creative person. And that's very rare, you know, in mass storytelling. The original, if you see it, the role that my character had evolved from was a ship's first mate. He was not very, not that charming and not that kind to the Fay Ray character or to women in general, you know, and this kind of love affair that ensues with an actress and a playwright, and the nuances of that within the storytelling that do not detract from the epic nature of the storytelling was wonderful. And so I was able to play someone who had the complexity in a big studio movie of both a creative, an intellectual, and someone strong enough physically who can go out and save the woman of his dreams and go into a jungle and have there be some level of truth to that in this fantastical world. And that's really very brave filmmaking, and it took a filmmaker who has a lot of autonomy to be able to have the power to do that in this world.
So before maybe leaving the room for...
Anybody seen that movie? You've seen it.
All the rest
Two.
All the rest
Two.
do.
Three. Okay. Love the Hard Way is a... It's a really fantastic film. It was directed by a wonderful man named Peter Zaire, who had unfortunately passed away several years ago. And he became a dear friend to my family and I. That film won the Silver Award at Locarno in 2001. It is and the beauty of it is that it's a very New York, messed up, tumultuous love story and drama. And it was based on a Japanese novel that had been banned in China for content and reinterpreted by a German filmmaker who was a physicist prior to even filmmaking, and told from a New Yorker's perspective. And so the complexity of all of that, and how screwed up these characters were was really kind of exciting and dark, and referenced the time in New York as well that I understood, and you know, as I came out of my adolescence, and I love that experience. You know, there are several. Thank you. But there are many roles that I.
Solve that?
Okay, someone's backing up a truck. But there are so many. You know, I've played a ventriloquist. I've played you know, several serial killers, which is odd. I've played Dali, which was, you know, fantastic and liberating and too short. But so many, and I really I'm grateful for that.
So maybe we will end up with a couple of questions from the audience.
Yeah. Well, the question was about my affiliation with the fashion industry. I mean, I'm grateful for that. I mean, I have plenty of depth. I'm not afraid of going deep, and I'm not judgmental about. And I don't really find. I mean, there are elements, obviously. You mentioned it being superficial, and I assume the correlation. Do I feel it is superficial? And I think if you look, there's artistry everywhere. There's artistry in the way, and there can be in the way we do anything. You know, we can do anything with intention and focus and presence that is artistic. And so much within that world is very creative, obviously. And of course there is great superficiality within that culture. And within movie making as well, if you want to be honest. You know, there has to be a balance that is drawn. The beauty of fashion for me and you know, is that I'm still somewhat a sample size, and that means they have clothes that they can just throw on and loan me, or ask me to come walk a catwalk and honor me, and sometimes compensate me better than an independent movie, and you know, it's nice. There's nothing wrong with it. I think it's really something I'm honored that, you know, I grew up in Queens. I grew up with clothes that we bought secondhand. You know, my jeans were 50 cents. So when people want to give you something that they made and look good on you, and it's a gift. It's beyond the superficial aspects of that. I see it much more on a blessing, and I'm thankful for it. And I've obviously, you know, helped certain brands immensely, and they've helped me. You know, during the timing of the awards, there was a big fashion campaign, and they got a tremendous amount of exposure, and as did I, because they put a lot of advertisement out there of me looking elegant in a suit, and it said my name. And so as the world was being introduced to me, they coupled with something that was probably the most deep experience in my life. There was very handsome, elegant imagery being disseminated that may have been promoting a brand, but was also enriching and reminding people of me in a different context. And my name.
There's a question there.
Ask you, how was to work with Adrien Brody?
Great fun. Really fun. You know, that project came about. There were several things at play then, but I had always been a fan of Dario.
He's gonna come tomorrow, but
Is he? Great. Maybe I'll see him. I saw him in Cannes this year. You know, that the beauty of my work is to be playful as well, and sometimes it's misunderstood. But there's something very exciting to be able to do a wide range and to explore a wide range of storytelling. To be, you know, a character like Vladislav Spielman, and then to jump into the shoes of Arnold Schwarzenegger and reincarnate a character in Predators, and for it to work, and for it to be profitable for a studio, and for me to put aside the doubts of my physical ability and my the ability to shift and portray something vastly different. And there was a real playfulness in that film, and it's an experiment, you know. And I loved collaborating with Dario. He's actually a very kind and gentle person, even though he likes to dismember people on film. And that also was incongruous, because when I went into the film, I had a big discussion with my dad. I said, I'm going to try and diminish some of the gore. It's a bit too gory, this and that. And then when you're there, it was so funny and not. There's a disconnect on that level if you're doing something in a genre film, and there's a disconnect in the process, and you're with all these people that you're, hanging out with and having lunch with, and the next minute, someone's lip is cut, and then you're like, ooh, that looks crazy. It's not, as much as you have to connect to the reality in the moment as a character, the on-set feeling is very different, and it's very hard to, it's hard to understand that, because you try to create a world, you try to create a very sinister, very morbid reality, which many people enjoy. But there's always a suspension of disbelief. There's always, I grew up watching Nightmare on Elm Street and couldn't wait to go to the theater and pay to go with my friends to see it and watch it twice, because, there's an audience for it, obviously, The genre films are probably the easiest movie to get made because there's an audience for it. And there's still an adolescent fantasy of mine to play within that world as well, as all the things that I wish to participate in. So he was wonderful to play around with.
There's another question, and then...
Hi, I'm mentioning actually the directing projects. Are there any projects you're working on? Because it seemed to be inevitable as you were mentioning it.
I hope it's inevitable. She was asking me about directing. I definitely have ideas brewing, but I'm not disciplined enough, and especially since I've fallen in love with painting, I don't have much free time for anything else. To put it into perspective, I took a 2-year hiatus 3 years ago, to not work and only paint, and I put aside all my other distractions and cultivated my understanding of painting and my working on that and producing works. And now I'm, like when I said there's a lot to do, and when I get home I have a lot to do that I want to do creatively. Part of that is developing projects. I've been producing works. I hope it's inevitable, to answer the question. There is time for that, and I don't feel like I can be any worse of a director as time goes by. It's really sharing insight and perspective, and you gain that on a daily basis.
We'll be waiting for you.
I hope so. And I'll come back one day and discuss it and rip apart my movie and be like, should have stuck to acting. Should have stuck to painting.
There is a question here. The third row. Terza fila.
È andato direttamente, credo, in un movie, in DVD, e qualcuno aveva scritto che c'erano state divergenze, problemi tra lei e l'amico Dario Argento sulla qualità del film. Non era una notizia giusta, allora? È andato tutto bene? E la domanda è, non ci sono stati così pareri diversi sulla qualità del film? E qualcuno aveva scritto che a lei non era piaciuto, nella stampa americana non era piaciuto il risultato.
Does everybody understand Italian? Except me? Sometimes I wish I didn't understand Italian, or that's not true. You should know not to believe everything you read. It's a big dilemma. I don't read a lot of the things that are said because they're misinterpreted, and sometimes, unfortunately, intentionally, because they sound interesting. Right? That's another conversation. But Dario and I did not have any disagreements. And we spoke at length about that film. So, yeah.
Another question. And then maybe...
Did someone translate it? Oh, someone's translated it. Great.
There is another question there.
Perché non ha votato Trump?
Ma volevo chiedere, ammesso che vada avanti questa amministrazione, che tipo di influenza potrebbe avere o magari sta già avendo sull'industria culturale e in particolare sul cinema?
Everybody understood that? Okay, well, I'm definitely here as an artist and not a politician, so I'm not going to delve too deeply into politics. The one thing I can say, there are obviously many things that we all are troubled by with the decisions of the current administration in the United States. One that's quite alarming is to opt to discontinue funding for the National Endowment of the Arts. And it's a minuscule amount of money considering what is spent, but it's definitely spent on armaments and potential rebuilding of a nuclear arsenal. So that's tragic, but more so on what it says to the people, that the leadership of such a great nation as the United States is that there isn't enough validity in art and the arts to fund it from the state. And that's tragic. And that's something that that's something you can write about, talk about. Because art will bridge all the borders, art will bridge cultural divides, and is a necessary part of capturing history and capturing our time, the time that we live in, for future generations. And as you know, some become incredibly valuable, and both monetarily and not, but I think just endorsing it is a necessity. Endorsing creativity and encouraging creativity in young people. There should actually be additional funding into the public school system for artistic outlets, because children are so distracted with everything and the technology, and there's no time to delve into that creativity unless someone guides them directly and shows them that this is an opportunity for you. This is another outlet. This is a form of expression that you should start investigating and cultivating, because it may blossom within you.
Thank you very much. No, thank you very much. Film that left something as a viewer, not as a among many others. I mean,
Well, there are many that have questions. It's a cool question. I mean, The Godfather 2 was an indelible movie in my life. I mean, it's such an assortment of greatness and genius filmmaking and brilliant actors working together. So that might be it. Thank you.
Thank you.